Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today, Thomas would like to give all you guys an overview on what's really going on in the Uranium One scandal. I don't even know where to start to ask you questions, Thomas, but it looks like you're ready to go.
Oh, Betsy, I'm a bit fired up about this one because it shows how deep the deep state is, and it goes back to Daddy Bush. When we talk about Uranium One, we're talking about a company that was called Eurasia. And Eurasia was formed to handle the uranium, the third largest uranium deposits in Kazakhstan, which of course Russia used for their missiles. Well, it gets really, really sticky because when it comes down to it, I'm going to tell you what Hillary is going to say, and you're going to be shocked, and Hillary's going to be right, and you're going to just not believe it. So I'm going to tell you the story from the beginning, because if I told you the fact of the matter right now, you would say, no, that is not possible. But when I tell you the story, you'll understand. Okay, back in when Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, was still president, he went, well, you got to remember that he was part during the Reagan administration when he was the vice president for taking down the USSR. He worked out of Azerbaijan with the Vulcans and the Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce to basically destroy the USSR. He worked with George Soros and Leo Wanta to help destroy the currency. But he also worked in many ways with the CIA to undermine what was going on. And then they chose basically a CIA operative to then lead Russia at that point. So George Herbert Walker Bush, back in the 90s, I believe it was could have been 91, I think, 92, 93. This was on the news. Everybody saw this. No one wants to remember it. No one wants to admit it. They came up with this program, and this is absolutely amazing. You know, they had thousands of missiles pointed at us, and many of their missiles were in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, all these different places that were satellite countries of the USSR. They called all those missiles back when USSR collapsed and became Russia. When they called them back, they had tons of uranium, enriched uranium, and plutonium on their hands. Well, you cannot dangle something worth that much in front of Daddy Bush, son of Prescott Bush, the funder of Hitler through Union Bank, all facts, by the way. He was charged with those and he was found guilty. So Prescott Bush was the supporter of Hitler. So what do you expect? Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, went to Russia and said, look, hey, you got all these missiles you're bringing back. We don't really have that many uranium deposits. So, you know, like we only have we're like way down 20th on the list or something. Canada's like number 2, Australia's like number 1, Kazakhstan's like number 3. So he went and said, later, we'll get to Kazakhstan, but that's where the uranium came from, most of it. So they build the weapons, they got the ICBMs, they close them down, send it back to Russia, and Daddy Bush goes over and says, we want to buy that uranium. We want to buy that plutonium. And you're going, what? They're our enemies. Why would they sell it to us? First off, because we are in a nuclear friggin' Cold War with them. We're going to annihilate each other and every person in the whole world. That's what we live with, the fear over our head. We have to have an enemy. Russia's so evil at any second, folks. You better be ready because they're going to launch thousands of... That's right. We've never been in a war with Russia. They've always been our ally in every war. And most of the conflict we've had with them was because the CIA went in and disturbed things, and we interfered with them way more than they're interfering with us. Daddy Bush saw plutonium for sale. Plutonium is $140,000 an ounce.
Woo!
Correct. After Daddy Bush got out of being the president, he joined the Carlyle Group and became a billionaire in 1 year because the 400 subsidiaries of Carlyle were involved in weapons and defense. But the second thing he did is he joined some of the biggest criminals in the face of the earth in a group called Barrick Gold. Barrick Gold is ran by Frank Giustra, Giustra. They became fast friends because why? He owns Barrick Gold. George Bush sold Barrick Gold 2 mines while he was still president for next to nothing, and then supposedly they became the biggest gold mines, 2 of the biggest gold mines in the world, and supposedly started producing more gold than anybody. And Barrick Gold became number 1, number 2, number 3 gold traders and gold producers in the world, though really those mines are dead. There's no gold in them. It's all fake. But George Bush Sr. had the CIA gold, and they needed to do something with it, so Barrick Gold became the front for CIA gold. Well, Frank Gustra and Daddy Bush were into the crooked gold, so they decided to get into the crooked uranium and plutonium deals, right? And from the beginning, they were after the plutonium because it costs so much. It's a huge amount to produce it, and somehow magically our atomic power plants just aren't producing enough plutonium for us, and somehow we have so much uranium in this country that we sold 20% of it to 10X, a direct Kremlin company, and they created an American version called 10M in this country, and for 8 years we gave them two of our largest uranium mines, 20% of the uranium we have in the ground, which then provided in 2014, for instance, provided 11% of the uranium that was bought by the corporate atomic power plants. The power plants aren't owned by America. They're owned by corporations. They're regulated. So this is a racket. So let's think this through for a second. Daddy Bush took down the USSR. Then he went and tried to steal and get at a good price all the uranium and plutonium that he could. So they set up a deal called megatons for megawatts. In 1993, the program, I believe, was instigated, but it wasn't until Bill Clinton came into office that he signed it into law. And at that point, 50 tons of uranium-238 came to us from Russia. And there were plans for it to be also plutonium. Now, here's the beautiful part of it. Do you think America took responsibility for that? No, Daddy Bush set up a CIA company called United States Enrichment Corporation, which then did, let's see, how much money was it? Tens of billions of dollars for this company. And now they continue on, and it isn't even an American-owned company. United States Enrichment Corporation is not United States. It's not enrichment. All it is a scam for the CIA to buy uranium and hopefully plutonium, sell it back to America for elevated prices. Well, when the Russians saw that this could be a scam, and remember, the Russians became basically, Boris Yeltsin was a mafia boss who didn't know much of anything except where his bottle of vodka was. He was simply a CIA frontman. And so basically the oligarchs of Russia became a fantastic oligarchic mafia that is led now by Vladimir Putin, considered to be the richest man in the world. Well, of course, Russia then said, well, yeah, we're going to sell you this. I think it was hundreds of billions of dollars, if I'm not mistaken, $200 billion, if I'm not mistaken, in this uranium from Russia. But wait, they're supposed to be our enemies. Why are we buying the stuff to make our weapons to blow them up with from our enemies? Oh, this wasn't good enough, okay? So when Bill Clinton saw that scam, and he saw what Daddy Bush had done, because Daddy Bush is a part owner in the 2,000 different CIA corporations. There are banks, brokers, offshore accounts, hedge funds, created by CIA money. Because remember, the CIA it makes me sick to have to say it, but if you don't know that the Afghanistan war is mostly about the opium and the fact that the CIA brings in heroin, then go back and look at the news where they admit this, and the United States president said, we have to allow the opium. Obama said this to the news, to the U.S. public. We must allow the opium to go on in Afghanistan because the Taliban needs the money. Now,
I think most people understand where the opioids are coming from.
They're coming through the southern border through the CIA, and that's the reason that the neocons and the Democrats don't want that to happen, because it would slow down business, and they're paid off by these people.
Right.
So, Daddy Bush got his piece of the pie with the U.S. Enrichment Corporation, which still is in operation today and continued on long after it was supposed to come into existence to do what? To buy and broker and have a mafia for uranium. So there's been a uranium mafia since the time of Daddy Bush, and we have not had an enemy. Russia has not been our enemy. They should have, if they would have should have attacked us when we took the USSR down. They should have attacked us when Larry Summers went in and wrote the voucher plan that basically almost broke the Bank of Russia. These are economic attacks. We've attacked Russia and its satellite countries so many times, it's ludicrous. I am not a fan of Russia because I'm not a fan of any mafia. And mafia kill people. If you don't think so, one day, the biggest mafia oligarch in Russia, another mafia oligarch in another country mentioned his name out loud. It got in the press. When he got back to Russia, he was shot down on the street before he could even get to his home. There are oligarchs in Russia that are so powerful that if I even told you about them, I would fear for my own life.
So why would American political leaders, Bill and Hillary, be involved in this nasty stuff?
Because Bill signed into law megatons for megawatts, and he got to see the flow of billions and billions and billions of dollars. So he and Frank Gustra in 2005 said, hey, we're going to get our piece of the pie. So already we had through the, there was a lobby, the Podesta group was lobbying for Russians to come into this country to create a branch of 10X. 10X is connected to Rosatom, which is basically then all eventually, after 2013, became Uranium One. They used Frank Gustra in Canada as a front man to make it look like they were going to buy the uranium for Canada. Canada has more uranium than they know what to do with. There would never, ever be a need for Canada, ever, not ever, to get uranium from us. Complete fraud. So the CFIUS, the Committee for International Foreign whatever, whenever there's a foreign deal done, they must approve it. They approved of this knowing that this uranium was going to go to Russia. And so you say, well, wait a second. That's insane. They're our enemy. That's treasonous. No, it's not treasonous, folks. Daddy Bush started this in the 90s, and it's been continuing. It never stopped. So when Bill Clinton decided to get his piece of the pie, it had been going for 20 years, and it was completed in 2013, where 50 tons had come here. Well, in 2013, they knew it was going to be over, so Bill had to get his piece of the pie. So Bill, Frank Gustra, they went to Russia, and they went to Kazakhstan, and they said, hey, let's do this deal. And so we're going to do it through a Canadian company, but we're going to do it just like Daddy Bush did it. We're not going to let it be transparent. We're going to set up, believe it or not, the Clinton Initiative for Sustained Growth. Now, what does that tell you? That means free money coming forever.
And it's going to be their financial growth.
Yes, their financial growth. So Frank Gustra and Bill Clinton set up a not-for-profit organization to basically handle a Clinton Foundation initiative, which of course is supposed to be a foundation, but they're not really a foundation, so they never will be audited. They can't be audited. That's why they have not been audited. And their corporation, some of these initiatives were actually founded before the Clinton Library, so that this illegal activity started when Hillary Clinton was a crooked patent attorney in Little Rock, and she and Bill set up their foundation before he was even the governor. Anyway, they used this new foundation for sustainable growth as a way to broker this stuff coming in and out of the country, to broker Kazakhstan and even more Russian plutonium. Remember, folks, they're after the $140,000 an ounce plutonium that's just sitting there. Russia has it sitting there. It's just sitting there, okay? Bush couldn't take it. Clinton couldn't take it. They are criminals. They are rogue CIA. They are corporate imperialists. And so when they see a deal like this, it's all just like Hillary, pay to play, just like John McCain on the Defense Committee, and yet he's got all of his greatest investment is in Raytheon. Every time he promotes war, he gets rich. This is the way it works, folk. Everybody, they have their vested interests. So Bill Clinton started in 2005 another deal with 10X becoming 10M, and they moved into this country, and for 8 years they muscled all of the different nuclear power plants and uranium enrichment plants, like in Paducah, Kentucky, and the other few that there are. Why don't we have enrichment uranium plants? Why don't we get it from our own plants? That's seriously mysterious, but somehow these Russian mafia guys leveraged them, threatened them, money laundering, fraud, extortion, you name it, and they had 10 Russian spies supporting them all of which during that 8 years the FBI, CIA knew about. They watched them. When they got one inch away from Clinton, they arrested all 10 spies, threw them out of the country, arrested Vidim Mikarin, and charged him with money laundering and these other things, and arrested the man who was the person who owned the trucking company, who took the uranium from Wyoming, took it to Canada, got it enriched, bring it back, and then sold it. How much do you think came up missing? Well, that was what the money laundering was all about. The Russian oligarchs who own 10X, and Vladimir Putin is one of the major owners, they all got payoffs for the fake uranium that was being dug up in America and Wyoming, shipped to Canada, shipped back to America, and sold through Russian mafia muscle here in this country until they got so tired of this, and it was so horribly blatant that they had to do something about it, but then they kept it under wraps. And it was only because Vidam Mikarin's 48-month sentence was leaked to one alternative news agency that we know anything about this. But folks, this is what Hillary's going to say.
Well, before you go there, boy, is this the case for decentralization. This is why we should not have that much power residing in one location, Washington, D.C., with all these corrupt criminals, because this is what the country has become. And that's just Betsy speaking her piece. But, why all this uranium, why don't they switch over to thorium and forget this uranium stuff? There's plenty of thorium out there.
Well, that's what a very brilliant person said to me yesterday. This must mean that uranium-238, 235, plutonium are energy of the past. They must have their replacements ready. But here's what is going to happen. Hillary is going to say, as she already has, the Committee for Foreign Investment in the United States, I didn't even go to that committee. I wasn't even there. There's 9 of us on the committee, and the deal is no one has ever dissented in the history of the committee. None of the 9 of us, even if I would have dissented and said, I don't want this uranium to go, it doesn't matter. We make a recommendation to Obama. So here's the deal, folks. Uranium 1 isn't a Hillary Clinton scandal. It is an Obama scandal. Obama approved the sale of the uranium, and the uranium also had to have approvals to leave this country and approvals to come back and approvals to be sold in this country, all of which the Obama administration literally, Barry Soetoro, Barack Hussein Obama himself approved these things. And of course, at the same time, Eric Holder and later Loretta Lynch knew that an 8-year-long investigation was going on, which was basically money laundering and espionage, now that we know really what was happening. And they hid it, and they never told the committee that should have been told about this. The multiple committees, 3 committees had to approve this sale. So Hillary's going to say, I have nothing to do with it. It had to go through 3 committees. Go sit on it. And if she gets really pressed, she's going to go, look, George Bush Sr. started this with the megatons to megawatts. So go jump in the lake. She's ignoring the payoffs, the $145 million. That's what she's trying to hide. She's also trying to hide, and they're trying to tiptoe around the fact that Barack Obama is the guilty party here. He allowed this to happen, though he knew that Russia had come in and muscled their way into our nuclear industry and literally was money laundering to oligarchs and stealing from us. Now, you will read articles, folks, that are going to try to dissuade you from the truth. And they're going to try to tell you the following. They're going to try to tell you those 2 mines in Wyoming were sold to them because they were dead mines and there ain't nothing in them. And that they never dug nothing up. And to this point, they ain't never dug nothing up. And anyway, even if they dug it up, they can't take it across into Canada. So the article says, we know for a fact no uranium ever left America and went to Canada. Well, wrong. We know the dates that those committees allowed this to happen. Wrong. That is totally wrong. And then they're going to say Hillary wasn't even on the committees. Wrong. She was there. She was the big proponent of it. A big proponent of it, because why? At the same time, she went to Russia and gave them the big red button. That was the restart button. And what did she do at that time? She made, I think it was Google, Apple, and Microsoft give $1 billion to Putin for his tech city in right outside of Moscow in a city called Sklokovo, and it's now called the Tech City. So Hillary went and gave $1 billion to the Russians. A few days later, or about 2 weeks later, Bill gave a talk to these uranium people and got $500,000. But before that, he got, as we now all know, he got permission to go to Russia and to talk to Putin and talk to all these uranium people. He's not... Why was he doing that? For the Clinton Initiative for Sustainable Growth, so he could pad his own pockets by being the middleman to basically broker uranium and plutonium in our country.
In wrapping this up, Thomas, I'd like to invite listeners to please write questions, if you have any, about this subject in the comment boxes below. We will check them for the next few days, and if we see that there's some running questions that need to be answered, we'll revisit this topic again. What are your closing thoughts on this, Thomas?
My closing thoughts are, this is the tip of the iceberg. She received $2 billion. The Clinton Foundation has received $2 billion. Most of that came in while she was Secretary of State. There isn't an enemy of America that she didn't visit as a Secretary of State. There's hardly a country, approximately 50%.
Was she visiting them just to shake them down for money?
Yes, for the Clinton Foundation, but also she went there and brokered more weapons deals than any Secretary of State in history. So she would go to these countries, even our enemies, and I couldn't understand. Here's a Secretary of State going to our enemies. Never in history has our Secretary of State gone to countries that we basically hold to be our enemies. And then they turn around to donate to the Clinton Foundation, and then we see that the State Department approves oftentimes military deals, but specifically more weapons were sold in her time. And those countries who received the weapons are the countries who gave her money. When is the emolument act going to be pressed on Hillary Clinton? You cannot take money from a foreign government while you hold a political office. John McCain, you'd have to go down for that too. Lindsey Graham, you'd have to go down for that too. Whole bunch of Republicans. How about all the ones who received money from Leo Blavatnik? They all got to go down. It is standard operating procedure in Washington, D.C. to have foundations like the McCain Foundation, where McCain says he doesn't know anything about where those millions of dollars come from. He has nothing to do with it. But then the other day, he took money from the foundation and spent it on what he wanted. Okay, so these are lies. These foundations are created as basically hedge funds. They're tax evasion. They are anti-American, and in my opinion, they are economically treasonous. And so we can't really say that Hillary Clinton is a treasonous person because she approved the Uranium One deal. Wrong. You'd have to say George Herbert Walker Bush, Bill Clinton, and Obama are all treasonous.
That doesn't mean we won't get Hillary on something, but not just for this, you're saying.
Well, it's the emolument clause
yes.
of the pay for play,
okay,
which has been proven so many times, it's ludicrous. She has never once contested a single amount that was mentioned in Clinton cash, okay? They've never once ever answered to any of those things, and if only 1/10 of it were true, she would still be one of the biggest criminals in U.S. history. So, Uranium One, you got to go back to Eurasia, the company Eurasia, and what happened with past presidents. And Uranium One is a Barack Obama problem. Mr. Obama, why did you give our uranium to Russia when you say that there are enemies? During the election, you said they were our enemy. Before the election, you said they were our friends. You said you were buddies with him. You went over with Hillary Clinton and gave him billions of dollars. You built up the military-industrial complex over there. You allowed companies that are our number one defense contractors to go over there and give them billions of dollars so that they could catch up to our technology. You, Mr. Obama, are treasonous.